Okay, today we had a Civil War PowerPoint, and what I wanted to do is I just wanted to go over some things that take us from the election through secession in the beginning of the war. So, once again, as we said a number of times, Stephen Douglas and Abraham Lincoln ran against each other for president this time. Last time they seen each other, they were fighting for the Senate seat, Illinois, and Douglas comes out on top. But as the prints and the transcripts of the Lincoln-Douglas debates filter around, people start to admire who Lincoln is and his intelligence, his stances, etc. So when the presidential election rolls around, this new party, the Republican Party, endorses Lincoln. They had a more clear stance on slavery. The Whig Party, which was also fairly popular at the time, but it was at this point losing a lot of its members because of the issue of slavery. It didn't have a harsh or a clear stance on slavery. They lost a lot of their supporters to various other parties. Lincoln's party, Lincoln's Republicans, were not exactly like the modern-day Republicans in the issue of state power versus federal power. They believed in a bigger government at the time. They believed in government power and a stronger centralized government, whereas the southern states did not. We'll get back to that. John Bell was part of the Constitutional Union Party. This was a short-lived party that really just wanted everybody to get along. Let's just all get along. Let's continue to compromise, keep things the way they were, and just compromise on into the future. It'll slowly work its way out. We had John C. Breckinridge. This is the guy supported by the South. He was a Democrat but Southern. And we have Douglas coming back into question. He is a Democrat but Northern. Now, this is the weird thing. Stephen Douglas having some support in the North, but losing support as Lincoln gains popularity, doesn't have any support in the South. Well, not a lot, let's put it that way. In the southern states, Breckinridge was a very, very pro-slavery. Slavery now, slavery forever, expanded into the new territories, slavery, slavery, slavery. Whereas Stephen Douglas is a little wishy-washy about the topic because he wants some of the Democratic support of the South, which was highly pro-slave, and some of the Democratic support in the North, which varied from contain it, don't let it expand, it'll slowly die out, to whatever. So he's in a situation with this slavery issue. He's very big on the Transcontinental Railroad. He's very big on expanding the country into new territories. And, you know, he was a seasoned politician. But because of the four different people and because of the way slavery played into those issues, Breckinridge gets most of the Democratic support, all of it in the South almost. Lincoln gets all of the North, and everybody else shares the rest. Now, this hands down gives Lincoln the election. The South did not even have enough electoral votes to win. Lincoln was not on the ballot in many of the southern states, but once again, because they had smaller populations and a good chunk of their population were not allowed to vote, i.e. slaves, they had no chance of winning anyways. This enrages the South. So, December 20th, 1860, South Carolina secedes. Holy cow, that was quick. Kind of makes you think they were thinking about secession before the election even happened. So, we got Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas who follow them in the months to come. Eventually, we'll get 11 states in all. They call themselves the Confederate States of America. They named Jefferson Davis as their president, and guess what? You would have never guessed it. In their Constitution, they make slavery legal. Now, the funny thing is that slavery was still legal in the United States at the time, but they just wanted the verbiage to be legit in their Constitution going forward. Now, here are the rest of the states that eventually join. Virginia, Arkansas, North Carolina, Tennessee will join into the next year, into the next summer, forming the Confederate States. Hey, they all pretty much connect. They're all in the same geographic area. They all have a very similar economy. This is not actually going to work well for them.
Yeah, all the following information is absolutely wrong. Viewer discretion is advised. Don't be a know-it-all. Study, please.
Mr. Teacher Person, I don't need to listen to this lesson. I know everything about slavery, Harriet Tubman, right? And an American started slavery, and you know how we did the slaves here. That how it was all over the world. Know what I'm saying? Someone said they had slaves in Africa, but I didn't believe him, because everyone in Africa is black. Who owned who? And it's like a whole ocean in between us and Africa. How Tubman gonna sneak people to Canada if there was an ocean in the way? Feel me? Real rap. You thought I wasn't paying attention.
Moving forward, there was a number of last-ditch efforts, one of which asked to take the Missouri Compromise line and extend it to the Pacific. Lincoln wasn't interested. Lincoln simply says, hey, we compromised enough. I don't want to expand this old dying economy into the new territory. It's almost like Lincoln is saying, you're lucky I let you keep it where you're at. So, with that being said, on the other hand, the Confederate States were excited. They were like, hey, we're doing something new. There were fireworks, celebrations in various parts of the South. Lincoln believed that secession was what? Illegal. If you had to apply to be admitted to the Union, you have to ask permission, apply to be excluded, apply to be removed, apply to leave. You can't just say you're leaving. That's not part of this thing. That's not part of democracy. So Lincoln did not honor the validity of just, hey, we're seceding. Fort Sumter. This is where it gets complicated. Fort Sumter was a federal fort. Federal troops were there. So even if you were playing the game that you were allowed to secede from the Union, federal stuff is still federal stuff. If you're leaving the Union, you're not taking Union land, Union troops, Union equipment. The South wanted Fort Sumter, tried to strangle it, choke it off, so to speak. And when Lincoln finds of this, he doesn't support the South controlling federal land. Fort Sumter, in his opinion, belongs to the United States. When they're running low on supplies, he lets the South Carolina governor know that supplies are coming. It's an unarmed ship, and Confederate soldiers fired upon Fort Sumter, and cannons and fire goes back and forth for 34 hours. Not a lot of deaths, some injuries, but I think few to no deaths, but a lot of destruction and damage. The fort eventually surrenders, this starting the Civil War. Here's some advantages and disadvantages. The North obviously has the population advantage, 22 million to 9 million. Around 4 million of combat age as opposed to 1.2 Southerners of combat age. Economy. There are 100,000 factories humming all over the Northern Territories. States. As opposed to only about 20,000 factories in the South. Once again, their economy was heavily cash crop, heavily cotton and tobacco, slave labor. Looking at railroads and transporting those goods, 70,000 miles of railroad already constructed, as opposed to only 9,000 in the South. It's pretty safe to say that with industrial power, the North had a little bit of an advantage as well. Armed forces, mostly drafted soldiers. They had more soldiers. They allowed African Americans to participate in some capacity. 10% of the Union forces were African Americans. They had a strong navy. The South did not have a navy. But an advantage could be that they had better trained soldiers, as they had a lot of seasoned veteran officers. They had a strong centralized government in the North. They had a brand new, so thus weaker and new, not as strongly centralized government in the South. And once again, having the national government be able to raise money and be able to raise an army with a draft, to commission money being spent and supplies being made, shipped, etc. For the federal government to have that extra control was a bit of an advantage in the North. Motives, to preserve the Union as opposed to preserve their way of life. And I guess you can kind of look at that as maybe an advantage to the South right away. They were fighting for something personal, and they had better training and better officers. So this may be a part of the reason you see a lot of Southern victories early in the war, but then when the war drudges on, the North begins to win and ultimately wins the war, as we know. Later on, the North added the free the slaves motive as well. So it's like, you're preserving a way of life that's not coming back. We are emancipating the slaves, which is going to, cause a problem with your economy. It excited a number of them to escape, to fight for the North. And, the South knew that the stakes were even higher. If they didn't secede, they would be able to have their lifestyle longer. Since secession happened, now when they are readmitted to the Union, their economy has to change and their lifestyle is over. Goals we could talk about later. I want to talk about choosing sides, which is a very interesting concept. Southern states that had not yet seceded had to make a decision after Fort Sumter. Lincoln helps a chunk of Virginia break itself off, which is now known as West Virginia. Once war broke out, many men had to decide who, especially in these border areas, had to decide who they were going to fight with. Families actually separated over the war. And as you can see, there were a few border states that did not secede. They did not secede. Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri. They were slave states, border states, but they did not secede. We also know that West Virginia breaks off as well. These border states are going to be very important in the battles that are to come. So, ladies and gents, once again, I just want to take you from the election to the start of the war. And once again, early in the war, we do see the South have a lot of success. Maybe because the fighting was for something personal, something they could take ownership of. Maybe because they just had better training, better generals, better planning. But once the United States finds the right leadership, the right commanders, their superior transportation industry, their superior numbers, etc., start to wear down the South. And emancipation is a backbreaker in the middle of the war. And even though the war drudged on for a good while after that, they knew They were playing for keeps at this point. So make sure you're getting into your pages, getting all the way through your pages, clicking on all the links, doing all the exit tickets and bell ringers and discussion boards. We are looking to test soon. Look at your updates to find out the date. Take care.